Hello and welcome to Craftiosity, where creativity comes to you, with monthly craft kits delivered to your door. This month, you'll create your own Bargello-inspired plant pot or container. Prepare to infuse your living space with vibrant hues and intricate patterns as you embark on the captivating journey of crafting a breathtaking Bargello-inspired plant pot using the fascinating art of plastic canvas stitching. Inside your kit, you'll find 2 Bargello template pattern guides, a craft container, a tapestry needle, a round plastic canvas base, 4 balls of cotton yarn in light grey, mustard yellow, denim blue and cream, and 1 sheet of plastic canvas. You'll also find your step-by-step photo instructions and a little something for your pinboard. Cut a length of blue cotton yarn approximately 1 to 1.5 meters in length. Thread one end through your needle, but don't tie a knot. Start in the bottom left square. Bring your needle up through the square from the back to the front. Leave a 2 to 3 centimeter tail of yarn at the back. Skip up and over 2 more squares. Then push your needle back down through the 4th square. Each stitch you make should start in square 1, skip 2 full squares, and then end in stitch 4. Your first stitch is complete. Bring your needle back down to the bottom of the canvas, to the right of your first stitch. This time, however, bring it up through the 2nd square from the bottom, not the bottom square. Skip over the 2 squares above and go down into the 4th square again. This stitch should start and end 1 square higher than the first stitch. Your stitches should encase the yarn tail on the back of the plastic canvas. Repeat this to the right of your 2nd stitch another 5 times. Each time you are moving the stitch up by 1 square to create a diagonal line of stitches. After you have created 7 stitches going upwards diagonally, it's time to start stitching downwards. Bring your needle up through the canvas to the right of your last stitch, but starting 1 square lower than the bottom of the previous stitch. Your stitch will also end 1 square lower. Repeat this 5 more times, each time dropping down 1 square when you start your stitch. Your final stitch should start at the bottom of the canvas. The stitches should create a triangular shape. When your yarn runs out, bring your needle to the back of the work and run it under the back of several stitches. Cut off any excess yarn. Thread your needle with a new piece of yarn and bring it up from the back of the canvas, leaving a tail to stitch over as before. Follow the above steps to create 9 more identical triangles along the plastic canvas. Check to make sure the stitches on each one line up. Now stitch an 11th triangle, but check the pattern on sheet 2 of your design template. The downward side of the triangle stops after 3 stitches. Once you have completed the whole first row, you can fasten off your yarn. Bring the needle to the back of the work and run it under the back of several stitches. Cut off any excess yarn. Next, you will change your yarn color. Cut a length of cream yarn and thread your needle. You will start stitching in the same square that your first blue stitch, on the far left, ended in. Bring your needle up through the canvas from the back, skip over 2 full squares, then go down into the next square. Stitch all the way along your canvas, starting each cream stitch in the same square that your blue stitches ended in, then follow the shape of the triangles. Each stitch must cover 4 squares. Your stitching should end at the same place as the blue stitches finished. Fasten off your 2nd color in the same way as before. Cut a length of the mustard colored yarn and thread onto your needle. Start your mustard stitching in the square that your first cream stitch ended in. Follow the same pattern until you reach the end. Fasten off. Cut a length of light grey colored yarn and thread onto your needle. Start your light grey stitching in the square that your first mustard stitch ended in. Make sure each stitch cover 4 squares. Follow the shape of the triangles as before until you reach the end, then fasten off your yarn securely. You've now stitched a row in each of the 4 yarn colors. Stitch a 2nd row in each of the 4 colors in the same order as before, starting with the denim blue yarn. Now stitch a 3rd set of rows in each of the 4 colors in the same order as before. Stitch a final row using the denim blue yarn. This row is slightly different as the middle stitch that forms the top point of the triangle will be shorter than normal. Instead of covering 4 squares, it will only cover 3. Each triangle will be stitched in this way. Stitch a final row using the cream yarn. This row will also have shorter stitches. Follow the template carefully. Each side of the triangle will have one stitch covering 3 squares and one stitch covering 2 squares. All the other stitches will cover 4 squares. Stitch a final row using the mustard yarn. This row will fill in any gaps remaining along the top of the pattern. Each V-shape should have a 2 square stitch, a 3 square stitch, and another 2 square stitch. There should be no unstitched squares within the design. Now to fill in the gaps along the bottom edge of your design. Stitch a row using the light grey yarn directly underneath your first blue row of stitches. Each side of the triangle will start or end with a 2 square stitch and a 3 square stitch. All other stitches will be the standard 4 square stitch. Finally, fill in the remaining gaps with your mustard yarn, following the stitch pattern in your template. The center of each triangle should have a 2 square stitch, 3 square stitch, 4 square stitch, 3 square stitch, and a final 2 square stitch. Take your stitched piece of plastic canvas. You will now cut away the excess plastic from around your rectangle of stitching. Cut close to the stitching, but don't cut through the plastic right next to your stitches, as this will cause them to come loose. Next, you will create the base for your pot. Take your round piece of plastic canvas. To make it the right size for your pot, you need to cut away the outer row of the plastic canvas using your scissors. Choose a yarn color to stitch your base with. Thread your needle with a doubled up length of yarn. Start stitching on the outside row of the base, stitching over 3 rows each time. Continue until you've stitched all the way around the base. Begin stitching your next row from the 3rd row of your base, where you ended your first set of stitches. You will be stitching over 3 rows again each time. Every so often you will need to do a double stitch, where 2 stitches start from the same bottom hole. Continue stitching your base, going over 3 rows at a time, until you have 2 rows left. Stitch over the remaining 2 rows at a time. You will work 3 stitches in each quarter section. Finish your base by stitching an X over the plastic canvas cross in the center of your base. Fasten off your yarn. Cut a new length of yarn. We use the same color that we used for the base, and thread your needle. Take your stitched rectangular piece and find the top edge, where the points of the triangles aren't cut off. Bring your needle through from the back, in one of the top edge squares, leaving a tail at the back. Bend your rectangular piece so that the short edges meet and the stitch design is facing outwards. Push your needle down through the other top edge square to create a stitch. Come back up through the next edge square down, and then go down through the corresponding square on the other side. Continue stitching in this way, going through a square on one side, then the corresponding square on the other side. Ensure your stitches are pulled tight so the edges of your plastic canvas meet and there is no gap in between. Once you've stitched all the way along the short edge, leave your needle and yarn attached. Place your cylinder of canvas on the stitched base. Now stitch around the bottom of the cylinder, joining it to the circular base. Stitch in the same way as before, going through one square on the cylinder, then through one square on the base. Continue stitching all the way round the base until it's completely joined. Finish with the needle on the outside of your pot. Fasten off by running the yarn under your stitches and cutting off the excess. Place the cardboard pot inside your completed stitched pot and it's ready to use. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed this tutorial and we look forward to welcoming you to the next craft kit project next month.